Hey, what's up everyone? It is Roball back again for another Roblox Studio tutorial. And in this tutorial, I'm going to be showing you how to use the Roblox new highlight service. Now, what is this highlight service? What is this? How it works is if you open up a Roblox Studio and you click on the base plate, the highlight service is essentially highlighting an object in a certain color and also outlining said object in another color. So if I were to go ahead and insert a part, and I'll insert different shapes later, but if I were to insert a part, now I were to press Control I, or I were to right click it and then press insert object down here, and then I type highlight. If you type highlight and insert the highlight, this is essentially what it looks like. Now it's pretty simple. If you've ever used a highlight marker, it's literally that around a 3D object or whatever object you put it inside of. For example, if I were to take it out in my Explorer and drag it into my workspace, this is what it looks like when it highlights everything. Now if I were to go ahead and move my camera down a little bit, you can see that the outline is white and it outlines even the spawn point and even this part and even the base plate. Just depends on what angle you're looking at it from in order to determine how the highlight outline will be seen. Now let me go ahead and delete that, and let me go ahead and actually make sure you know that to open the Explorer and properties, which are pretty important for this tutorial, all you gotta do is go to the View tab, then click on Explorer and Properties, and then once you've done that, you would go to the Model tab, and I want you to insert a part or a block, then a sphere, and then I also want you to insert something like a wedge or even a cylinder if you want to. Now the reason why we're inserting all these parts is because I want to show you how good this actual update is. Like this update, as far as I know, everyone has access to it, and if you don't have access to it currently, you probably will get access to it soon. I simply wanted to make a tutorial. This is actually my third time recording this because I wanted to make sure I get all the info out for you all to watch and to understand and to learn from. But let's go ahead and get started and continue actually. If I were to insert a highlight into here, bam. If I were to insert a highlight into here, bam. It highlights all shapes and sizes, and you can even go into the free models, otherwise known as the toolbox, and you click on here. And let's say I want to go ahead and insert a vehicle, and I want to insert a car. If I were to insert this car, I can insert the highlight service into that too. So if I were to go ahead and click that, bam, the entire car is highlighted. And now you probably understand what I'm talking about in terms of how useful this is. If you think about it, if you were to make a game where maybe you take damage, or maybe make a game where you're purchasing objects, like let's say you're making a City Skylines type of game. I actually just bought that game, that's why I mentioned it. If you were to try to make a game like that, and let's say you wanted to place a vehicle down or place a building down, but you want to see what it looks like first, you could highlight the object so the player knows that they can't place it in a certain area, or maybe the player knows that they can, like highlight it in green or highlight it in red if they can't place it, and so on. And it just adds another level of detail to the game that is super easy to do. This takes zero effort, in my opinion, to insert into your game, and it's so easy to mess with, and I'll show you just in a moment how to mess with the properties to make it look even cooler. But let's go ahead and delete the car. We don't need that for now. I'm actually going to insert a dummy. So if I were to go into my animation editor right here and insert a block rig, I have this guy right here. And with this block rig, we can go ahead and insert the highlight service into it, and bam, we have the highlight. Now, if you look over in my Explorer, you can see that the highlights parent is the dummy model itself. If I were to insert it into the left foot, only left foot is highlighted. If I were to insert it into the left hand, only the left hand is highlighted, and so on and so forth, but I'm going to put it back into the model itself. And I'm going to mess around with the properties and explain them as far as I can explain them. The only property I have the most difficulty explaining is the Adornee, and we're actually going to start with that just to get out of the way. Now when it comes to Adornee, all you have to do is click on it, and it basically is like setting a parent. Like if you were to go ahead and go to parent, it's the exact same premise. But let's say I were to go ahead and undo that, and then I were go ahead and click on the Adornee, and I were to click on the torso. It basically does the same thing while keeping the parent as the dummy. Now I probably wouldn't mess with this too much. How this works is, if you were to insert another highlight and set the Adornee as the arm, it gets rid of the other one. So it's kind of something you probably don't want to mess with. It's a little bit too much effort, but let's go ahead and redo that or undo that. And let's go over to the depth mode. This is actually super cool. So if I were to go ahead and go to this part, I'm going to delete the highlight in this, and I'm going to put it in front of my dummy. I can see the dummy in front of it. And if you're making a game, like let's say you're making some sort of game where you have an ability to see players, through objects because maybe you have an item like in a FPS game, or maybe you have a special ability. That's pretty cool, but let's say you don't want that to happen. You want people to get highlighted, but you don't want people to be able to see them through parts. Right now, the depth mode is set as always on top, but if you were to set it to occluded, this makes it so you cannot see them through parts just like that. Now the sphere in the back is still always on top, but this dummy's highlight is currently occluded, and that's a really cool feature to have, and I think it's something you should definitely play around with to learn about. Always on top means it's always going to be seen through objects, and occluded means that it's not going to be seen through parts. Now the fill color, this is the cool part. This is the red part right here, the red around the character. This is something you can change easily, and it makes it super cool. This is so much fun to mess around with. I would definitely recommend messing around with these colors and see which one you prefer the most. Like red, I would say, is definitely like a hit marker. Like you hit someone, they take the red highlight feature damage or whatever. If someone's healing, they could maybe have a green or like a bluish one. If someone has a shield, maybe like a purple or a blue or silverish one. Gold could be if they have like a Super Mario effect, like they're going to be doing so much damage to everybody. It's a pretty cool feature. Definitely recommend playing around with the fill color. Then the fill transparency is essentially how transparent it's going to be. If I were to set it to 0.25, the red is a lot more visible in the character. If I were to make it 0, you can literally not see the character and it looks just like that. If I were to make it 0.9, the highlight's very, very transparent. 0.7, even less transparent. 0.8, in between the two. 0.6, 0.5, 0.4, 0.3, 0.2, 0.1, and so on. So let's just go ahead and set that back to 0.5. Then if I were to go to the name, it's essentially the name of the highlight itself. So if I were to name it Noob, it's the new name. It's no longer called highlight, but you know what I mean. I'm going to undo that. And then the outline color. This is the white line around the player. If I were to set the outline color to maybe blue, now you see that there's a blue outline around it. But something cool about this is if I were to set it to, actually it's purple right now, if I were to set it to 0.5 outline transparency, it blends my outline color to the highlight itself. So the red and the purple outline, the red fill and the purple outline blend together to make like a pinkish purple or a magenta, and it's really cool. One thing I will say, this is essentially the basis of the tutorial. The outline transparency is super cool. You should definitely mess around with that. But one thing I will say, 2 complaints I have, is I wish they would make some sort of wiki tutorial on this so that we can understand this more. I had to do this for the force field material as well. I had to basically figure it out by reading what people say on Twitter and making a video on it. And I know it helped a lot of people, but it's honestly difficult to make tutorials because in the future they could release something on it and it could just make everything I say sound stupid. So that's one thing. That's one complaint. The Adornee is a little bit confusing. That's the main part I want to know stuff about. But then when it comes to the outline, I feel like Roblox should give us a little bit more control over the outline. I think the outline is something that we should be able to mess around with the thickness of the outline. And I think maybe, and also, this is something I just came up with on the fly, if we can make it so the outline surrounds the highlight instead of being filled inside of the highlight, because currently, if you don't understand what I mean, if I were to make the outline transparency 0.5, you can tell that it blends with the fill color. So that means that the outline is not necessarily outside of the player. Maybe it is, I could be wrong. But the outline, in my opinion, should have the option to make it so it fills inside. So if I were to make the outline thicker, given the option in the future, it basically fills in the outline inside the fill color. So that it blends with the purple and the red right here. But if I were to have an option to make it so it outlines on the outside, like extrudes, that's a good way to do it. Extruding, it would be pretty cool to have an outline extrude and maybe like whatever the opposite of extrude is. Something like that would be cool. If you understand what I mean, it's a little bit confusing, but I'm sure any developer or software engineer at Roblox probably gets what I mean. Being able to determine whether the outline extrudes outwards or inwards on the player or whatever the object is highlighted is. That would be a cool thing to have. But otherwise, that is the tutorial. If you have any questions, guys, comment down below. I'll try to answer to the best of my capabilities for as long as I can. But I hope this definitely helped you. In my opinion, this is one of the easiest things to understand, so I would definitely recommend just playing around with it. Try to implement it into your game and tag me on Twitter at Roball01 once you figured it out, or maybe show me what you've made with the highlight service. I think it's a super cool update. I think it's definitely going to be useful. And if it's currently not out, just wait a little bit. It should be out soon, but I highly recommend playing around with it if you do have access to it. It should work in game as far as I can tell. I've seen a game have it, and I'll even link the game down below. It's by Clone Trooper or Maximum ADHD. And they made a game in which you can play around with the features, and it's super cool. So I'll definitely link it down below in the comment section. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Leave a like and subscribe, because until then, it's been your man Roball. I'm signing out now. Comment down below any future tutorials you want. Take care, everybody.
Musicality.